Hi everybody, this is Sam Hunter at Hunter's Design Studio, and this is a video to show you how to do satin stitch in embroidery. So I've got my fabric and I've got a little bit of wash away stitch stabilizer with some lines on it for demo purposes, and I've got 6 strands of floss in my needle. If you're going to be filling something with satin stitch, it makes sense to have a lot of floss in there, unless the space is super tiny. In which case you might want to do more stitches with fewer threads in it. So I knot my threads, and I'm going to come up here, and the intent is to come across this line filling up some satin stitch. Now I will be honest with you, this is kind of like not one of my favorite stitches. Okay, so the idea is we're going to get really close to this one and do the same thing again. Now, I sometimes have a difficult time maintaining my line when I do this. Okay. Go there, and we're going to go as close as we can stand to be up here. And I'm using a thimble because when you're dealing with 6 strands of floss, sometimes pulling the needle through can be a bit of a challenge. Okay, so this isn't looking bad, which is saying a lot for usually how I do satin stitch. Okay, now I saw a great video. I wish I could remember where to give credit, but one of the things they did, I'm going to move over here so that you can see it, is in doing the satin stitch, they actually did space them just a little bit further apart. Okay, so if that's your first line, snug up those loose threads immediately when you see them, and come in sort of kind of close, but not necessarily right on top. This actually helps you maintain a much better line while you're doing this. Okay. Okay, so you see they're ever so slightly apart. And then, and go along and do several of those, okay? And then come up in between them. And then go down in between them to fill it up. I've actually found this to be a much better method for me to get a nice fill in there. The other thing you can do, and I would do this with perhaps not 6 threads, 6 strands in your floss. I'm going to come up just inside my line here. Just inside. Whoa, a little bit too far inside. There we go. And I'm going to lay down some back stitch on each side. Now, obviously, you wouldn't be doing back stitch down here and then coming up and doing back stitch here with the same thread. You would have outlined your entire satin stitch object. Okay, and then I'm going to pop a couple more up in here. Just inside my line. Okay. All right, so what I've done is I've set a line, sort of a foundation around where I want to stitch. And if you come up above and below that line with your satin stitch, it holds it up. It gives you a better line to work to as well. But it holds it up and it makes it stand up, which is lovely for things like leaves and petals. So if you want a little bit more height out of your satin stitch, not your back stitch, you can hold it up with these edges. It's also possible to come in here and just do a few other stitches to hold that space up so that you can stitch over it. Another thing that a friend of mine taught me, Annie Matlack, you'll see her named in a lot of my patterns. She does alternate versions of the patterns, is one of the things that she taught me when you have a pretty big area to fill is it's totally okay to fill it with chain stitch. Okay, so if I'm gonna say fill a box like right here, chain stitch actually works better if you've got longer areas to fill than little boxes, is come in here and put a relatively snug chain stitch in. There we go. Lots of floss, a little hard to pull through. Okay, can you see how that's filling the space? Holding onto it so it doesn't turn into one of those snaggy knots. I'm always amazed at how quickly thread can knot itself. It seems to do it while you're not even looking. Okay, so I'm ending that chain right there, but coming back here, and I probably want to have tightened this guy off just a little bit more. We'll tighten him like that. There we go. And then come back and fill this way. One of the nice things about filling with chain stitch is you can sort of guide the size of the loop on the chain to maximize your fill. The other thing is if you have some kind of awkward little corner of a curve, you can just pop a single stitch into that to make up for any of the spaces. See how that's filling? So it's a different texture, but I quite like it in a lot of things. And I find it a little bit easier to do with some regularity than satin stitch. That doesn't mean you should be afraid of satin stitch. It's definitely a really good stitch to have in your arsenal and to learn how to do quite well. But I find that if I'm filling big areas, I kind of like that a little bit better. So if you have any questions at all, please get a hold of us through the contact page, the Get in Touch page on huntersdesignstudio.com, or leave a question underneath this video and we'll do our best to answer you. Keep stitching.